A newborn fails to pass meconium in the first day of life, develops a distended abdomen and bilious vomiting, and an abdominal film shows dilated loops with a bubbly, ground glass appearance in the right lower quadrant. A contrast enema finds a microcolon packed with inspissated meconium. This is meconium ileus, and it is so tightly linked to cystic fibrosis that it is a presenting sign of the disease in the newborn. That baby opens this episode, the second on cystic fibrosis, which leaves the airway behind and follows the disease everywhere else it goes. The pancreas and gut, the nutritional consequences that decide survival, the liver, the endocrine failure that becomes cystic fibrosis-related diabetes, the bones, and fertility. The organizing idea is simple. The same thick secretions that obstruct the airway obstruct every other duct in the body. The chloride channel defect is not confined to the lung, it obstructs one duct after another. In the pancreas, thick secretions plug the exocrine ducts early in life, injuring the acinar tissue and replacing it with fat and fibrosis, producing pancreatic exocrine insufficiency and malabsorption. In the gut, dehydrated intestinal contents obstruct the bowel, from meconium ileus in the newborn to its equivalent in the older patient. In the biliary tree, plugged bile ductulas drive a focal biliary cirrhosis. In the sweat gland, the failure to reabsorb salt is not just a diagnostic test, but a real risk of salt depletion. And over the lifespan, the endocrine pancreas is progressively destroyed, so diabetes emerges, while chronic malabsorption and inflammation erode bone and the reproductive tracts are affected. One thread runs through all of that damage and ties it together, and that thread is nutrition. Because the pancreas fails to digest fat and protein, and because chronic lung disease raises the metabolic cost of simply breathing, the patient with cystic fibrosis is fighting a constant energy deficit, and nutritional status turns out to be tightly linked to lung function and survival. That is why nutritional management is standard of care from the moment of diagnosis, and why so much of this episode is really about feeding the patient well enough to protect the lungs. The great majority of patients with cystic fibrosis, on the order of 85%, are pancreatic insufficient, while a minority with residual function genotypes remain pancreatic sufficient. The mechanism is that early duct obstruction injures the acinar tissue and replaces it with fat and fibrosis, so fat and protein are malabsorbed, giving the classic picture of bulky, greasy, foul-smelling stools, poor weight gain, and a distended abdomen, together with deficiency of the fat-soluble vitamins. Insufficiency is confirmed by a low fecal pancreatic elastase, and the pancreatic sufficient patient is watched over time with an annual fecal elastase, because insufficiency can develop later. There is a twist worth knowing about who actually gets pancreatitis. It is the pancreatic sufficient patient, the one who still has residual acinar tissue available to inflame, who is at risk of recurrent acute pancreatitis, which can even be the presenting feature of a milder cystic fibrosis problem. The severely insufficient patient whose exocrine pancreas is already burned out rarely gets pancreatitis because there is little functioning tissue left to inflame. The treatment for insufficiency is pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy, enteric-coated lipase taken with every feed, meal, and snack, and dosed in units of lipase, not milligrams. The infant is given about 2,000 to 5,000 lipase units per feed. The older child or adult starts near 500 lipase units per kilogram per meal, in a usual range up to about 2,500 per kilogram per meal, with roughly half that for a snack, all titrated to growth and stool pattern. The safety ceilings matter for boards. Stay under 2,500 lipase units per kilogram per meal and under 10,000 per kilogram per day, because doses well above that are linked to fibrosing colonopathy, a strictured colon. Malabsorption and the high metabolic cost of chronic lung disease have long made cystic fibrosis a high-energy, high-fat disease to feed, and growth is monitored closely because nutritional status tracks with lung function and survival. The target is a weight for length or body mass index at or above the 50th percentile. In the era of highly effective modulators, this is being individualized rather than applied blindly, because some patients now become overweight, so calories are matched to the child rather than automatically maximized. The fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K are supplemented and monitored because they are malabsorbed alongside fat, and when diet and enzymes cannot maintain growth, oral supplements and then gastrostomy tube feeding are added. Salt deserves its own beat, Because cystic fibrosis sweat loses excessive sodium and chloride, that loss puts infants and anyone exercising or in the heat at risk of dehydration and a hyperkalemic metabolic alkalosis, a pseudo-Barter picture that is a classic presentation. So salt is supplemented from the start. The infant is given about 1/8 of a teaspoon of table salt a day from diagnosis, increasing toward 1/4 teaspoon by 6 months of age, with more during heat, fever, or heavy sweating. The obstructed gut of cystic fibrosis presents differently at different ages, and boards test the pair. In the newborn, it is meconium ileus, the inspissated meconium obstruction of the distal ileum that can sometimes be relieved by a contrast enema but often needs surgery. Its later life equivalent is the distal intestinal obstruction syndrome, in which a mass of fecal and mucous material obstructs the region of the cecum, producing crampy right lower quadrant pain and a palpable mass. It is treated medically with hydration and osmotic agents such as polyethylene glycol or a contrast enema, and it must be distinguished from simple constipation and from appendicitis. A third sign in the young child is rectal prolapse, driven by bulky malabsorptive stools, coughing, and malnutrition. It is a classic clue that should prompt cystic fibrosis testing, though with its broad differential it is not diagnostic by itself, and the gut disease is broader than duct plugging alone. Gastroesophageal reflux, intestinal dysmotility, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and chronic abdominal pain are all common. The risk of colorectal cancer also rises with age and especially after transplant, so screening colonoscopy begins earlier than in the general population, from age 40 and repeated every 5 years, with transplant recipients age 30 or older starting within 2 years of transplant, if they have not recently been screened. The plugging of small bile ductules produces the liver disease of cystic fibrosis. It begins as a focal biliary cirrhosis and can progress in a minority to multilobular cirrhosis with portal hypertension, splenomegaly, and esophageal varices. Surveillance is the point boards test. Bilirubin, the transaminases, alkaline phosphatase, gamma-glutamyl transferase, and the platelet count are checked at least annually from diagnosis, with a liver and spleen ultrasound every couple of years through childhood. A caution on treatment: ursodeoxycholic acid was historically given to improve bile flow, but it is no longer considered proven to prevent advanced liver disease, so it is not routine prevention. A small, poorly functioning microgallbladder and gallstones round out the picture. As the exocrine pancreas is destroyed, the endocrine islets are gradually lost as well, and cystic fibrosis-related diabetes becomes the most common comorbidity. Rare in young children, but affecting a substantial fraction of adolescents and adults. It is its own entity distinct from type 1 and type 2. The primary problem is insulin insufficiency from islet loss, worsened by the insulin resistance of infection and steroids, and it is generally not ketosis prone. Its danger is insidious because a subclinical decline in weight and lung function often precedes the diagnosis. The screening rule is specific and testable. An annual 2-hour 75-gram oral glucose tolerance test beginning by age 10, not hemoglobin A1C, which is unreliable and underestimates glycemia in cystic fibrosis, so a normal value does not exclude the diagnosis. The diagnostic thresholds are the standard ones: a 2-hour glucose of 200 mg per deciliter or more, a fasting glucose of 126 or more, or a hemoglobin A1C of 6.5% or more, with special rules for the acutely ill and the enterally fed patient in whom sustained hyperglycemia over a couple of days also makes the diagnosis. The treatment is insulin. Oral agents are not the answer, and good glycemic control improves both nutrition and lung function. Cystic fibrosis bone disease, low bone mineral density, and a real fracture risk arises from the convergence of vitamin D and K malabsorption, chronic inflammation, corticosteroid exposure, low body weight, delayed puberty, and reduced physical activity. Because of it, bone mineral density is measured by a bone density scan in all adults and in children over 8 who carry a risk factor, a weight under 90% of ideal, a forced expiratory volume in 1 second under 50% predicted, meaningful long-term steroid exposure, delayed puberty, or a prior fracture. Management is to optimize vitamin D and calcium, treat hypergonadism, encourage weight-bearing exercise, and reserve bisphosphonates for established disease. Reproductive involvement is nearly universal in men and partial in women. around 98% of men with cystic fibrosis are infertile because of congenital bilateral absence of the vas deferens, an obstructive azoospermia in which sperm are produced normally but cannot be delivered. Fatherhood is achievable through surgical sperm retrieval and assisted reproduction, and the finding of absent vasa can itself be a marker of cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator dysfunction even in isolation. Before assisted reproduction, a man needs genotyping and carrier testing of his partner, because the child's risk depends on the partner's genotype. Women have reduced fertility from thick cervical mucus, but they can conceive, and fertility may rise on modulators. A pregnancy is then carried with multidisciplinary attention to lung function, nutrition, diabetes, liver disease, and medication safety. 2 final threads round out the burden. Depression and anxiety are more common in cystic fibrosis and in caregivers, and screening for them is now a routine part of care. And all of this, the enzymes, the vitamins and salt, the diabetes screening, the bone scans, the liver surveillance, the fertility counseling, is the reason cystic fibrosis is managed at a multidisciplinary center, because no single clinician covers the whole multisystem burden. Return to the newborn with meconium ileus. The obstruction is relieved, the sweat chloride and genetics confirm cystic fibrosis, and the infant is started on pancreatic enzymes with feeds, fat-soluble vitamins and salt supplementation, with growth tracked at every visit. Over the years, the same child will be screened with an annual glucose tolerance test from age 10 and a bone density scan when risk factors appear, watched for the distal obstruction that replaces meconium ileus, and counseled in adolescence about fertility. That single lifespan is the episode one-channel defect, obstructing one duct after another, with nutrition as the thread that ties survival together. Here are the board pearls. Meconium ileus in a newborn is cystic fibrosis until proven otherwise, and its older equivalent is the distal intestinal obstruction syndrome. Rectal prolapse in a young child should also prompt the thought. Most patients are pancreatic insufficient, so treat with enzyme replacement at every feed, meal and snack. Supplement the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E and K, and add salt, keeping enzyme doses under about 2,500 lipase units per kilogram per meal to avoid fibrosing colonopathy. The exception worth remembering is that recurrent pancreatitis strikes the pancreatic sufficient patient, not the insufficient one. The remaining pearls are the endocrine and multi-system burden. Nutrition predicts lung function and survival, so growth monitoring is central, targeting at least the 50th percentile, while individualizing calories in the modulator era. Cystic fibrosis-related diabetes is the common late comorbidity. Screen with an annual 2-hour glucose tolerance test from age 10, not hemoglobin A1c, and treat with insulin. Watch the liver for focal biliary cirrhosis and portal hypertension with annual enzymes and periodic ultrasound, and the bones with a density scan in adults and the at-risk child over 8. And nearly all men are infertile from congenital absence of the vas deferens, though biological fatherhood is still possible with assisted reproduction.